I didn't think he'd actually walk away. That's what I need everyone to understand first. I thought my wedding speech announcing my vision for our marriage would be bold, modern, progressive. I thought I was being authentic and honest about my needs in front of everyone who mattered. I thought my groom would be moved by my vulnerability and openness. I thought this was my moment to set the tone for our unconventional, evolved marriage. I was catastrophically wrong about all of that. My husband, well, technically my husband for about 45 minutes, his name is Roman. We'd been together for 4 years, engaged for 1 year, planning this wedding for 8 months. Expensive, elaborate wedding. 200 guests, gorgeous venue with gardens and a fountain, string quartet, 5-tier cake, photographer and videographer capturing everything. The works. The kind of wedding that costs as much as a car and gets featured in magazines. Everyone had told me I was lucky to be marrying Roman. Successful, stable, kind, devoted. The kind of man who'd planned the most romantic proposal, who'd been patient through all my wedding planning stress, who'd compromised on every detail to make me happy, who loved me completely and showed it constantly, who was excited about building a life together, starting a family eventually, growing old together. But I'd been having doubts for months. Deep, persistent doubts that I'd tried to ignore or rationalize or push down. Not about Roman exactly. He was wonderful in every objective way. About the entire concept of monogamous marriage. About whether one person could really meet all my needs forever. About whether I was closing doors by getting married that I'd regret having closed later in life. About whether I was capable of being satisfied with just one partner for the next 50 years. I'd been reading extensively about ethical non-monogamy for the past 6 months, ever since we'd set the wedding date, about polyamory and open relationships and alternative relationship structures that rejected traditional monogamy. Had been consuming podcasts obsessively, hours and hours of people talking about how they maintained multiple committed relationships successfully. Had been reading books with titles like The Ethical Slut and More Than Two and Opening Up. Had been devouring articles about how traditional marriage was designed for property transfer and patriarchal control, not human fulfillment. About how we evolved for multiple partners, not lifelong monogamy. About how jealousy was a learned social construct rather than a natural emotion hardwired into humans. And I'd started genuinely believing maybe I wanted that kind of life. Maybe I needed that kind of relationship structure. Maybe monogamous marriage to Roman, as wonderful and stable and loving as he was, would eventually feel constraining and limiting and suffocating. Maybe I was polyamorous at my core and just hadn't fully accepted or acknowledged it yet during our relationship. Maybe our marriage could be the start of something more expansive and evolved and modern than traditional structures allowed. I'd tried multiple times to talk to Roman about all this during our year-long engagement. Would mention articles I'd read about ethical non-monogamy. Would bring up concepts I'd learned from podcasts about polyamory. Would suggest casually that maybe we could be open to the possibility of our marriage not being exclusively monogamous forever. Would float ideas about how love could be infinite and loving other people didn't have to diminish what we had together. He'd seemed deeply uncomfortable every single time I'd brought it up. Had explicitly said multiple times that he wanted a traditional marriage. Had been clear and direct that he believed commitment meant exclusivity. Had stated unambiguously that polyamory wasn't something he was interested in exploring. Had said the idea of sharing me with others, or me being okay with him seeing others, felt fundamentally wrong to him. Had been as clear as someone could be that he wanted monogamy, but he'd never forbidden me from bringing it up or discussing it. Had never explicitly shut down conversations completely or given me an ultimatum. So I'd held on to hope, increasingly desperate, irrational hope, that maybe once we were actually married, once we'd made that legal and public commitment, he'd be more open to the idea of expanding our relationship structure. that maybe his resistance was just about fear of the unknown, and once we were securely married, he'd feel safe enough to explore more unconventional arrangements. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and hit hype to boost this episode. Drop a comment below with your city or country. I'm always curious where viewers are joining from. The wedding day had been perfect up until my speech. Ceremony in the garden went beautifully. I'd cried during our vows, the traditional vows we'd both agreed to, about forsaking all others and being faithful until death. Cocktail hour was elegant, dinner was delicious, everyone was happy and celebrating, and the energy was incredible. Then came the speeches. Roman's best man went first, funny, touching, appropriate. My maid of honor went next. Sweet stories about our friendship, beautiful words about Roman and me together. Then Roman gave his speech to me, talked about how much he loved me, how excited he was about our future, how he couldn't wait to build a life together, how I was his everything, how he'd never been happier than the moment I agreed to marry him, how he was committed to making me happy every single day of our marriage. The crowd had loved it, applauded enthusiastically, wiped away tears, looked at us with that expression people get at weddings when they believe in love, and forever and happily ever after. Then it was my turn to give my speech. I'd prepared 2 versions over the past weeks. The first one, the one I'd shown Roman when he'd asked to see my speech draft, was safe, traditional, exactly what people expected. Thanking our families for their love and support, expressing gratitude to friends who'd traveled, talking about how much I loved Roman and how excited I was about our future together. Standard wedding speech material that would make people smile and nod and think we were the perfect couple. But I'd also written a second speech, the real one, the authentic one, the speech that expressed my genuine vision for our marriage and our future together. The speech that would be honest about my needs and desires instead of performing conventional expectations. I'd kept it hidden, saved on my phone, reviewing and revising it constantly in the days leading up to the wedding. And standing there with 200 faces looking at me expectantly, I made the decision, the catastrophic, relationship-ending decision, to give the real speech instead of the safe one. I stood up with my champagne glass, my hands shaking slightly, with what I told myself was excitement rather than nerves. Tapped the glass gently with my knife to get everyone's attention. The conversations around the room gradually quieted. People turned toward me smiling, ready for the bride's speech, expecting something sweet and conventional, ready to applaud and toast and celebrate. I waited for complete silence, looked out at 200 faces I knew, our families, our friends from college, our colleagues from work, Roman's business associates, my extended family, including elderly relatives, everyone who mattered to both of us. Took a deep breath and began delivering the speech I'd convinced myself was brave and authentic when it was actually just destructive and selfish. Thank you all so much for being here to celebrate with Roman and me on this absolutely incredible day, I started, voice steady, smile bright. Marriage is such a profound commitment, such a meaningful and serious step, and I'm so grateful to be taking it with all of you as our witnesses and supporters. Normal opening, safe, traditional, standard bride speech beginning. People smiled and nodded, settling in for what they expected would be a conventional, touching speech. Roman was smiling at me from his seat, looking proud and happy, and completely unsuspecting of what was coming. I want to be really honest and authentic with everyone here today about what this marriage means to me personally, I continued, moving into the dangerous territory, about what I'm truly envisioning and hoping for with Roman going forward into our future together. Because I genuinely believe that honesty and authenticity and vulnerability are the absolute foundation of any good, healthy, sustainable marriage. Roman's face had already started changing subtly, that shift from proud and happy to uncertain and worried, like he was sensing something in my tone or word choices that indicated I was going off script from what we'd discussed. Like some alarm in his brain was starting to go off even though I hadn't said anything explicitly alarming yet. I've been doing extensive reading and thinking over the past several months about marriage and relationships and what it truly means to build a life with someone, I said, warming to my topic, feeling emboldened by what I mistook for courage rather than recognizing as recklessness. About what commitment looks like in the modern world. And I've realized that traditional monogamous marriage, the model most of us grew up with, the template society provides us, might not be the only way to structure a committed partnership, might not even be the best way for everyone, for every couple, for every person. People were starting to look genuinely confused now, glancing at each other with expressions that said, "Where is she going with this?" Glancing at Roman, whose face was getting progressively more closed and worried. The energy in the room was shifting from celebratory to uncertain to uncomfortable. But I pressed on, committed to delivering the speech I'd prepared, convinced I was being bold and authentic, rather than destructive and selfish. I've come to understand and accept about myself that I might be polyamorous at my core, I said clearly, loudly, making sure everyone could hear this announcement I was making. That I might need more than just one deep, committed, romantic, and sexual relationship to feel completely fulfilled as a person. That the idea of one person, even one wonderful person like Roman, meeting absolutely all my emotional and physical and intellectual needs forever and ever, feels genuinely limiting and constraining to me. And I think it's critically important to be completely honest about that from the very beginning of our marriage, rather than hiding it or pretending otherwise, or letting resentment and dissatisfaction build over years. The room had gone completely, utterly silent now. That heavy, thick, uncomfortable silence, where everyone knows something is going terribly, catastrophically wrong, but no one knows what to do or say, or how to react. People were frozen with their champagne glasses halfway to their mouths, staring at me, staring at Roman, whose face had gone from worried to shocked to something harder to read, maybe hurt, maybe fury, maybe betrayal, maybe all three at once. So what I'm proposing, what I'm publicly announcing to all of you here today, as our community of witnesses, is that Roman and I are starting a marriage that will be open to expansion and evolution, I declared, feeling like I was being revolutionary and brave when I was actually just being destructive. Open to the genuine possibility of other meaningful connections and relationships. Open to polyamorous structures where we both have the freedom and permission to develop romantic and sexual relationships with other people while maintaining our primary commitment and partnership with each other as spouses. I looked directly at Roman now, making eye contact, trying to will him to understand what I was saying, trying to communicate that this came from a place of authenticity rather than recognizing it as the selfish manipulation it actually was. He was staring back at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face before in 4 years together. Pure shock, deep hurt, absolute betrayal, burning fury, all competing for dominance on his features. I want to be crystal clear that I love Roman completely and absolutely, I continued, somehow still not reading the room, still not understanding that I was destroying everything. That's not in question at all, that's not what this is about, but I also genuinely believe that love is infinite rather than scarce, that loving other people doesn't diminish or take away from what Roman and I have together. It actually expands my capacity for love and connection, and I'm genuinely hopeful and optimistic that he'll come to understand and embrace this vision for our marriage over time, that we can build something more evolved and honest and expansive and modern than traditional monogamy typically allows. I raised my champagne glass high, smiling, somehow still thinking this was going well, that I was being brave and authentic, that this was my moment of truth. To a marriage based on radical honesty, continuous growth, and the courage to build something unconventional and evolved. To Roman, who I love deeply and completely, and who I hope will join me in this journey toward a more expansive vision of commitment. Cheers to us, and to our unconventional marriage. Maybe 10 people clinked their glasses awkwardly out of pure social conditioning and confusion. Most people just sat there in absolutely stunned, horrified silence. And Roman stood up slowly from his seat at the head table, pushed his chair back deliberately, and walked out of the reception hall without saying a single word to me or anyone else. Just stood up and walked out in complete silence while 200 people watched. I stood there holding my champagne glass watching my husband of 45 minutes, walk out of our wedding reception in front of 200 people. Stood there as confused whispers filled the room, as people started pulling out their phones, as both our families looked at me with expressions ranging from shock to fury to disgust. Roman's mother stood up and followed him out, then his father, then his sister. Then my own mother pushed back from her table, looking absolutely mortified, and came toward me quickly. "What did you just do?" she hissed quietly, grabbing my arm. "What were you thinking?" I was being honest. "You just announced at your wedding reception that you want to sleep with other people, in front of everyone, in front of his family, in front of your grandmother." I was announcing that I believe in polyamory. You've been married less than an hour, and you just told everyone you want an open marriage. Do you understand how humiliating that is? For you, for Roman, for both families? My father had joined us. "Your husband just left his own wedding reception. The photographer is asking if we should cut the cake without him. The DJ wants to know if we're doing the first dance. What do you want us to tell people?" "I need to go talk to Roman." "I don't think he wants to talk to you right now," my father said coldly. "I think he's processing that his wife used their wedding speech to announce she wants to have multiple partners." I found Roman outside by the decorative fountain where we'd taken couple photos just hours earlier during golden hour, back when everything was perfect and beautiful and we were happy newlyweds. He was sitting on the stone edge of the fountain, head in his hands, still in his tuxedo that we'd spent hours choosing together. His mother and father and sister were standing about 10 feet away, giving him space, but staying close enough to protect him. All three of them looked at me with pure, undiluted hatred when I approached tentatively across the manicured lawn. "Roman," I said quietly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. "Can we please talk about this?" "Talk?" He looked up at me slowly, and the expression on his face made me physically step backward. "You want to talk now? After what you just did? After humiliating me in front of every single person we know? After using our wedding reception, our actual wedding reception that we just had 45 minutes ago, to announce that you want to fuck other people?" "That's a really reductive way to frame what I said." "That's exactly what you said." Roman's voice rose, loud enough that some guests who were lingering outside could probably hear. "You announced that you're polyamorous, that you need other relationships to feel fulfilled, that one person, that I, am not enough, that monogamy feels limiting. You said all of that, at our wedding, during your speech as my new wife, in front of my parents and my grandparents and my colleagues and literally everyone I work with and everyone we both know. I was trying to be authentic about my genuine needs and desires." "You've been married less than an hour," Roman shouted, standing up now, gesturing emphatically. "We've been married literally 45 minutes. I checked my watch when I came out here, and you're already talking about needing other people, about expanding our relationship, about building polyamorous structures. What did you think would happen? What did you possibly think my reaction would be? What did you think I'd do when you publicly announced you want to sleep with other people on our wedding day? I thought you'd be willing to at least discuss it rationally." "We discussed it during our engagement," Roman's voice cracked with emotion. "Multiple times, at least 5 separate conversations, and every single time, I told you explicitly that I want monogamy. I told you polyamory isn't for me. I told you I need exclusivity in marriage. I told you that sharing you with others, or you being okay with me seeing others, felt fundamentally wrong to everything I believe about commitment. And you said, okay, You agreed. I thought we were on the same page. I thought we'd resolved this and were moving forward with a traditional marriage. Apparently, you were just lying and biding your time until you could trap me. I wasn't trying to trap you. Then what do you call this? Roman demanded. What do you call marrying someone who's been crystal clear about wanting monogamy, while secretly planning to announce you need polyamory at the wedding reception? What do you call making vows about forsaking all others, and then 45 minutes later telling everyone you want multiple partners? What is that if not a trap? If not manipulation? His mother stepped forward protectively. You need to leave right now. You need to go back inside, or go home, or go anywhere. But you absolutely need to leave my son alone right now, while he processes what you just did to him. He's my husband. Is he? She asked sharply, voice cold as ice. Because you just announced in front of 200 witnesses that you don't want a traditional marriage with just him. That you need other relationships to feel fulfilled. That being married to only him feels limiting. That doesn't sound like you actually want to be anyone's wife. That sounds like you want permission to cheat with fancy philosophical language attached. That's not what polyamory is. I don't care what you call it, Roman's mother interrupted. I care that you humiliated my son at his own wedding. I care that you made vows you apparently didn't mean. I care that you've destroyed what should have been the happiest day of his life. So you need to leave. Now. Roman stood up fully, looked at me with such complete devastation in his eyes that I almost couldn't hold his gaze. I'm annulling this marriage. Tonight, first thing tomorrow morning, I'm calling our lawyer. We can get an annulment because the marriage hasn't been consummated and because you clearly entered into it under false pretenses. You wanted a polyamorous life. Absolutely fine. Go have one. Build whatever relationship structure you want, just not with me, not as my wife, not connected to me in any way whatsoever. Roman, please don't do this. Did you plan this speech? He asked, voice breaking. Did you plan in advance to announce this at our wedding? Or did you just decide spontaneously, in the moment, to blow up our marriage in front of everyone? I wrote the speech a few days ago. You planned it, he said, the hurt in his voice cutting through me. You deliberately planned to humiliate me like this. You wrote a speech announcing you want other partners, and you planned to deliver it at our wedding reception in front of everyone we know. You absolutely knew, that I wanted monogamy. I've told you that explicitly, directly, repeatedly throughout our entire engagement. And you married me anyway with full knowledge of what I wanted, and then you immediately, publicly told everyone you need more than just me. I didn't think you'd react this extremely. How did you think I'd react? Roman asked incredulously. With applause? With understanding? With excitement? Did you genuinely think I'd stand up next to you and say, yes, honey, brilliant idea, let's invite other people into our marriage on our wedding day? Did you think I'd just smile and accept it? What did you possibly imagine my response would be? I thought you'd at least be willing to discuss it seriously as partners. We discussed it during our engagement, Roman repeated, frustration evident, multiple times over the course of months, and every single time I gave you the same answer. Monogamy. I want monogamy. I told you that. And you said okay, and I thought we agreed to have a traditional, exclusive, monogamous marriage. Apparently I was wrong about what you agreed to. Apparently, you were just lying until you got me legally bound to you, and then you'd announce your real intentions. I wasn't lying. I genuinely thought we could evolve together. We've been married 45 minutes, Roman shouted again. There's no evolving together happening. There's you trapping me into marriage, and then immediately announcing you want to change all the fundamental terms and conditions we'd agreed upon. I didn't have an answer. Could feel his family watching this confrontation with cold judgment. Could feel my own carefully constructed rationalization crumbling under the weight of his absolutely valid points. Could feel everything I'd built, the vision, the speech, the plan for our evolved modern marriage, revealed as the selfish manipulation it actually was. I'm done, Roman said flatly, emotionlessly, like he'd moved past the anger into something colder and more final. This marriage is over before it even started. We'll get it annulled this week. You can have whatever kind of polyamorous life you want. You can build whatever relationship structures feel authentic to you. Just not with me, not as my wife, not connected to me in any legal or emotional way. I'm done. He walked past me back toward the venue to collect whatever belongings he needed. His family followed closely behind him, his mother shooting me one more look of pure contempt as they passed. Left me standing alone by the fountain in my wedding dress with my bouquet still somehow in my hand, realizing, with devastating clarity, what I'd just destroyed and how badly I'd miscalculated everything. I went back inside the reception hall to chaos. Half the guests had left already. The other half were gathered in groups whispering and staring. The caterers were confused about whether to serve the cake. The DJ had packed up. The photographer was gone. Our beautiful, expensive reception was disintegrating. Roman was nowhere to be seen. His best man told me he'd left, gone to a hotel, didn't want to see me or talk to me, was serious about the annulment, had already texted his lawyer despite it being 9 p.m. on a Saturday. My maid of honor approached me looking torn between sympathy and judgment. What were you thinking? Why would you say that in a speech, at your wedding? I wanted to be honest. You could have been honest in private. You could have discussed this with Roman before the wedding. You could have figured this out during your engagement. Why did you wait until you were married and standing in front of everyone to announce you want to sleep with other people? I didn't think he'd end the marriage. What did you think would happen? He's told you multiple times he wants monogamy. He's been clear about that. And you stood up at your wedding and told 200 people you need a polyamorous life. Of course he left. Anyone would have left. My own mother found me. We're leaving. Your father and I are leaving. We're humiliated. Our friends are asking what that speech meant. Roman's parents are furious. You need to figure out what you're going to do, but we're going home. You're leaving me here. You're an adult. You made this choice. You deal with the consequences. We'll talk tomorrow when we've all calmed down, but right now we're too angry and embarrassed to be around you. They left. Most of the remaining guests left shortly after. I stood in my wedding dress in an empty reception hall with uneaten cake and abandoned champagne glasses and the wreckage of what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The venue coordinator approached me awkwardly. What would you like us to do with everything? The cake, the flowers, the favors? I don't care. Donate it, throw it away, whatever. And the final payment? Bill it to my parents, or Roman's parents, or split it. I don't care. I changed out of my wedding dress in the venue's bridal suite, left it hanging there, took an Uber home to the apartment Roman and I shared. Let myself in knowing he wouldn't be there. Sat on our couch in the home we'd built together and processed what I'd just done. Roman filed for annulment Monday morning. His lawyer was ruthless and efficient, argued that I'd entered the marriage under false pretenses, that I'd concealed my desire for a polyamorous relationship until after the ceremony, that the marriage hadn't been consummated. That annulment was appropriate given the circumstances. I didn't contest it, didn't fight, signed whatever papers his lawyer sent over. Within 3 weeks, our marriage was annulled. Legally, it was like it had never happened. We'd been married for 45 minutes, and it was erased completely. Roman moved out of our apartment. I'd thought we'd fight over it, but he just took his stuff and left. Said he wanted no reminders of me or what we'd had. Said the apartment was mine if I wanted it, or he'd break the lease and I could find somewhere else. He didn't care. He just wanted to be done. I tried to reach out multiple times. Called, texted, emailed. Tried to explain that I'd thought I was being authentic, that I genuinely believed we could build something more evolved than traditional monogamy, that I hadn't meant to hurt him. He never responded, eventually blocked me completely. I talked to my friend Jasmine about everything, about the wedding speech, about Roman leaving, about the annulment, about losing everything. She'd been at the wedding, had witnessed the whole disaster, listened to my attempts to justify what I'd done before, saying what I needed to hear. "You didn't want to marry Roman," Jasmine said bluntly. "If you'd wanted to marry him, really marry him, and commit to him, and be with just him, you wouldn't have announced you need polyamory at your wedding reception. You would have either been monogamous with him or broken up with him before the wedding to pursue polyamory. You tried to have it both ways, tried to marry him and keep him locked down while also reserving the right to pursue others. And he called your bluff. I did want to marry him." "You wanted to marry him and pursue polyamory," Jasmine interrupted. "You wanted him as your stable foundation while you explored other connections. You wanted the respectability and security of marriage, plus the excitement of multiple partners. And when you announced that's what you wanted, he left. Because that's not what he signed up for. That's not what you'd agreed to. That's not what he wanted from marriage. I thought he might be open to it once we were married." "So you trapped him," Jasmine said. "You married someone who explicitly told you he wanted monogamy, hoping you could change his mind after you'd legally bound yourself to him. That's manipulation. That's dishonest. That's the opposite of the authenticity you claim to be practicing." She was right. I'd known all along Roman wanted traditional monogamous marriage. He'd told me repeatedly. I'd agreed during our engagement because I wanted to marry him, wanted the wedding, wanted the life we'd planned. But I'd also wanted permission to pursue others, had convinced myself I could announce my polyamorous vision after we were married, and he'd have to accept it, or work with it, or at least discuss it seriously. I'd gambled our marriage on being able to change the terms after getting him to commit. And I'd lost everything. It's been 11 months since my wedding that ended before the cake. 11 months since I announced I wanted a polyamorous life in front of 200 people. 11 months since Roman walked out and annulled our marriage. I see him occasionally on social media, through mutual friends who haven't unfriended me. He looks happy, genuinely happy. Dating someone new who apparently wants exactly what he wants, traditional monogamous commitment. Someone who isn't interested in polyamory or non-monogamy or expanding relationship structures. Someone who wants to be his wife without caveats or conditions. I tried pursuing the polyamorous life I'd claimed to need. Downloaded apps specifically for non-monogamous people. Met people interested in ethical non-monogamy. Went on dates. Tried to build the multiple meaningful relationships I'd said I wanted. Couldn't make anything stick. Couldn't find people I actually connected with. Couldn't build anything real or substantial or worth the cost of what I'd destroyed. The truth I didn't want to admit even to myself at the time, was that I didn't actually need polyamory. I wanted the option of polyamory. I wanted permission to pursue other people if I got bored or if someone more exciting came along. I wanted Roman lockdown as my primary partner while maintaining freedom to explore. I didn't actually have multiple people I was interested in building relationships with. I just didn't want to close the door completely on the possibility. And I destroyed my marriage of 45 minutes, because I couldn't handle the idea of committing fully to one person. Because I wanted insurance policies. Because I wanted freedom without losing security. Because I was selfish and manipulative and dishonest with someone who'd loved me completely. The wedding venue still sends me promotional emails. "Book your next event with us," they say cheerfully. I got married there and unmarried there in the same evening. The photographer sent our photos, all the pictures from before my speech, when we both looked happy and excited and in love. I can't look at them without feeling sick. I think about that speech constantly, about standing up in my wedding dress with champagne in my hand, thinking I was being bold and authentic. About announcing my polyamorous vision, thinking it was my moment of truth. About watching Roman's face change as he understood what I was saying, about him walking out without a word, about the marriage ending before we cut the cake. I understand now what I did wrong. I married someone who wanted monogamy while secretly planning to pursue polyamory. I waited until after the ceremony to announce my real intentions. I used our wedding reception to essentially change the terms of our agreement in front of everyone we knew. I expected him to accept it because we were already married and he was trapped. I was manipulative and dishonest and cruel to someone who deserved honesty before the wedding, not a public ambush after. And I understand why he left, why he annulled the marriage immediately, why he moved on completely and never looked back. Because I'd shown him exactly who I was in that moment, someone who would marry him under false pretenses, someone who would humiliate him publicly, someone who prioritized my desire for options over commitment to him, someone who wasn't actually ready to be anyone's wife. At my wedding speech, I announced I wanted a polyamorous life, thought I was being authentic and brave, thought I was setting the tone for our evolved, unconventional marriage, thought Roman would respect my honesty, or at least discuss it seriously, thought wrong about everything. My groom ended the marriage before the cake, walked out of our reception, filed for annulment Monday morning, erased our marriage like it never happened, and taught me that you can't have traditional wedding vows and polyamorous intentions, that you can't marry someone who wants monogamy while planning to pursue others. That honesty means being truthful before the ceremony, not making announcements after. I learned by losing everything, by watching my marriage end in 45 minutes, by sitting alone in a wedding dress in an empty reception hall, by understanding too late that authenticity without timing or consideration is just cruelty with better branding.